A 33-year-old, blonde-haired, blue-eyed fashion designer is found dead on a yacht in Montauk. And for a year, we've heard nothing from police. Well, they must be trying to hide something, cover something, or protect somebody.
Why was the first 911 call not made until midnight? Him running up and down, naked, calling for help.
Hey there, folks. It has been a mystery out of Montauk for a year now. What happened to Martha Nolan? Well, her family now has an answer for us all. She was murdered. And with that, welcome everybody to Out of Network. I'm TJ. This is Robes, and this is a story, Robes, that has gotten international headlines for a full year. And for a full year, we've got no answers.
It's remarkable. We have been checking on this story weekly, sometimes daily, thinking surely now police are going to release some crumb of evidence in this case. And there has been nothing for a full year. We don't know how she died. We don't know if it was or is being considered a homicide or just a natural death or anything. Like, we don't have a clue about any possible outcome. We just know that she died, and we don't know why or how.
But because of who she is, the age she was, where she died, how, the manner, if you will, the circumstances surrounding it, and yes, because of how she looked, it all played into this story. Martha Nolan, Montauk, last year, August. Young woman found dead, unresponsive, on a yacht in Montauk. Now, if you all don't know, what's the best way to explain? Everybody knows the Hamptons, but you got to keep going a little bit to get to Montauk, which is, frankly, one of our favorite towns in this area.
Yes, it's hard to get to in terms of just the amount of time you got to travel on a two-way road out from Manhattan all the way down to the tip of Long Island. But yes, you go through all the Hamptons: West Hampton, Southampton, Bridgehampton, East Hampton, Amagansett, and then you get to Montauk. And it is gorgeous. You are literally, it's called the end, but you are at the end of Long Island. You are at the eastern tip of the United States of America, and it is a destination for the rich and the famous, from celebrities, you name it, and it's got worldwide recognition. Maybe the Hamptons obviously trump it, but this has become a destination for a lot of folks. It once was a surfing village, a fishing village.
This is why I mentioned that part of it. A lot of people, if you're not in this area, still across the country, you know what the Hamptons and what that means. Montauk is a sleepier little town.
Yeah.
It's a surfer town, and you see a lot. Yes, there's money there, and there are celebs there, but nothing like the Hamptons. It is a chill, laid-back place. It is a wonderful little surfing town. Some even call it a surfing village.
Yes.
To a certain extent, too, like you said, Robes. So this is an idyllic place that still does, Robes, have money, has big major resorts there, is a vacation destination. And yes, there's money. There are boats. People park their yachts out there, no problem. So when we hear a 33-year-old, blonde-haired, blue-eyed fashion designer is found dead under suspicious circumstances on a yacht in Montauk, Robes, that is, it's tailor-made for a tabloid story, but an international phenomenon, which it became for a little while. And we're sitting here a year later, Robes, still don't know how this woman died.
Yes, and add to that, she was on that yacht with a 60-something-year-old man who was her main investor. She had a boyfriend, she had friends she was communicating with that night. She was there for a late-night business meeting. It had gotten pushed back throughout the day. And the way he behaved, the way he acted after she was unresponsive, after she had died, also begs so many answers, because there are so many questions about the fact that, yeah, he was naked. And there is some time that has lapsed that we don't know what happened between when he claims she went limp and when 911 was eventually called, and not by him.
And so the story now is back in headline because we're not getting official answers from authorities about what happened to Martha Nolan, but we are hearing from her family about what they think happens, and they do believe the man she was with that night killed her. And we know this because they have now filed a summons, I should say, of their intent to file a wrongful death lawsuit against Christopher Durnan, the 60-plus-year-old man who owns the boats she was on that night, Robes, and they have an intention of doing this wrongful death for $50 million. And they, in their filing, Robes, made clear what they think happened to her, and they think violence was involved.
Yes, her mom actually is filing this lawsuit, Elma Geraldine Nolan. And by the way, she comes from a small town in Ireland, so her family has been, I'm sure, just obviously in so much pain from losing their daughter, but also the distance, not knowing necessarily how things work, not only in America, but in Montauk, and trying to get answers from the police, trying to get answers from local officials, I'm sure has been difficult. And so, yes, we are now hearing from them that they are wanting to hold, even if police don't, this man, Christopher Durnan, responsible for their daughter's death. And they used the term assault in their lawsuit, or in the lawsuit they are going to be filing.
And they filed the summons on August 4th, 2026. Her date of death was August 5th or 6th, into that overnight. So they do this almost, Robes, to the 1-year anniversary of her death. I cannot believe how little we have gotten from authorities. For a little while, Robes, we didn't even know which jurisdiction was handling the investigation. It was from the very beginning, and Robes, there have been no updates. No toxicology
Nothing.
results, no autopsy results. It seems as if this has kind of gone away, and I'm not trying, I really don't want to criticize, and I know there are good folks in this police department, Robes, in the prosecutor's office, but you do give the impression that you don't want this to be solved. They haven't come out and said this is a cold case. They haven't come out and said we are fighting for justice. They haven't come out and said we don't have enough evidence to bring charges. They have just at every turn said nothing.
No
and
comment.
At every turn they said we're waiting on this or we're waiting on that. It's been a year, Robe. This is a high profile. So it does lead, and we are not going to speculate about what did or didn't happen. However, you can state clearly the facts that we do know, and that ish don't add up.
It doesn't, and it never has. Not from the beginning. From the very beginning, we were actually in Montauk when she died. So we happened to be about a mile away. We were vacationing with our family when news of her death spread like wildfire across this village, and you couldn't walk down the street, you couldn't sit at a restaurant, you couldn't actually shop at one of their little boutique stores without hearing someone talking about her name. People were worried, people were concerned. This just doesn't happen. I know we hear that a lot in cases where you've got a mysterious death, but truly this is an anomaly. This isn't something that folks were used to hearing about or even reading about. And so it was the topic of conversation a year ago, and it still is to some degree because there has been no answers. If you look up any article about, and so many reporters have been following up, they will tell you they get the runaround from police, and they have gotten zero information for a year about where the investigation stands, only that it's open and active. But there's been no even attempt at trying to be transparent or trying to at least acknowledge. We understand that people want to know this. We understand that we want to be transparent, and trust us, we are on top of this. We are working towards whatever. They've said nothing.
And so, Robes, so I won't take an issue with anybody who looks at what's taken place and says, well, they must be trying to hide something, cover something, or protect somebody. That, based on the behavior here in this investigation, lends itself to that question being asked or curious about. Robes, you're not accusing any police department of wrongdoing, but when this happens, Robes, on such a high-profile case that everybody's had their eye on for quite some time, it just doesn't add up. You mentioned the family. I feel awful for them. They're so far away, first of all, but Robes, this is a place, you don't know New York, you don't know the United States, but Robes, even if you do fly into New York, it's hard to get to Montauk.
It is hard.
You can't just easily come in and out, and Robes, it's hard to do. They are at a disadvantage and at a distance and have been for a long time. So, you know what? I ain't mad at them for hiring a couple lawyers here in New York who know this system, and they have now gone to New York Superior Court and filed this and said they have to answer now. They've served Christopher Dernan. He has to answer in 30 days, or there's an automatic default judgment of $50 million against him.
So we're going to hear from Christopher
There will be
Dernan.
a response.
We are going to hear from him. But what we heard from Martha Nolan's family in terms of why they're filing this lawsuit, this says a lot. And when you read their lawsuit, you get a better understanding of where they stand. Because, look, they had an independent autopsy done of Martha Nolan, of their daughter. They have had an independent investigation going on right now. They've hired a PI. As you mentioned, they hired attorneys. So their stated purpose of their lawsuit is this: to recover damages for the wrongful death of Martha Nolan and to recover damages for the personal injuries and conscious pain and suffering sustained by Martha Nolan O'Slattery prior to her death.
She suffered in some ways. She had a conscious pain that was caused by this guy, is what they're saying. Well, so again,
That's significant.
They've had an autopsy done. There might be something, Robes, they can point to that authorities, the medical examiner, why are they holding on to an autopsy for a year?
Look, we were questioning why the medical examiner office in LA held on to Celeste Rivas Hernandez's autopsy for months. But it ended after a few months.
Yeah.
They were building a case. We have had an arrest of David Anthony Burke, and now there's a trial. Okay, it took a few months, but we got there. Mm-hmm. There have been other cases that take a few months, and people question and push, and then we get an answer. Why we haven't gotten an answer in a year's time is something that I can't understand.
Well, we haven't gotten confirmation that there is an active investigation going on. Are they still trying to find out what happened to this young lady? And that's what she's owed. That's what, Robes, just to find out one way or another. She does not have and has not had an advocate here. She does not have family here. She has lawyers now, and maybe this is going to move forward. But who is beating down the door? Who is getting in front of American press, going on morning shows, saying, I'm pissed at what's happening in Montauk. They haven't given me answers. That's what families here do oftentimes, Rope, to keep these stories going. They don't have it. I bet it would make a huge difference if they had one representative hooting and hollering from the mountaintops that we need answers. And to hold law enforcement accountable. Robes, this is not even dragging of the feet. This makes no sense. And it gives the impression that we don't care what happened to this young lady. Not saying that that's what these police are doing. But for her family, Robes, of course, it gives an impression.
And so the family now, in their lawsuit, is asking for relief sought, money damage, as you pointed, $50 million. But they specify what those damages are. And they say, including damages for the, how do you pronounce that? Pecuniary?
I'm
not good with legal, but with the injuries that they claim she sustained.
Pecuniary.
Pecuniary. Yeah. Okay. See,
yeah.
I'm not.
I didn't know where you were.
I didn't know how to say that word. All right. So,
financial damages.
Financial damages, basically because of her wrongful death, and they say damages for the decedent's, Martha's, conscious pain and suffering and personal injuries sustained prior to her death, and punitive damages together with interest, attorney fees, cost, and disbursements of this action. The point being, they're claiming, and in several different lines of this lawsuit that they're about to file, that she suffered, that she had pain, she had injuries before her death. That would suggest their independent autopsy points to something that we have not heard from authorities.
Well, if their autopsy shows it, does the medical examiner's autopsy not show it? And it's possible, Robes, they don't have enough evidence to bring a case and think they can get a conviction of some kind. That's possible. Tell us that. Tell us that. Or tell us there is no evidence of any violence or anything that happened to her. Tell us that. They're telling us nothing, so clearly they're telling the family nothing as well. Christopher Dernan is the name. This is what the summons that they filed is with the intent of doing the lawsuit. They say that Christopher Dernan on or about August 4th and 5th aboard a vessel at the Star Island Yacht Club. This was his action: assault, and that the defendant intentionally and wrongfully assaulted the decedent. 2, gross negligence and reckless and wanton conduct by the defendant toward the decedent, each of which acts described individually and in combination caused the decedent's injury and death. This is not an accidental overdose. This wasn't a slip and fall. This wasn't an oopsie. They are saying he assaulted Martha Nolan and killed her. And for a year, we've heard nothing from police about that.
That's wild. And if they're making these claims in a lawsuit that they are filing, that means they have evidence, or they believe they have the evidence to back that up. Now, not a lot had come out over these past 12 months, but I did see and have heard from, they, I guess, released it through their attorney, but Martha Nolan's family has suggested that the toxicology they had done with their independent autopsy only showed a trace amount of cocaine, and certainly nothing to the level that would be lethal or deadly, that would stop her heart. So that, because that was suggested, maybe even insinuated that, okay, who knows what they were doing on that yacht? They were drinking, they were doing drugs, she took too much, her heart stopped, it was an accidental overdose. I think a lot of folks maybe jumped to that conclusion because of the lack of information and just trying to put two and two together. But the family came out pretty quickly and said after that independent autopsy that that was not the case, that their toxicology reports said the complete opposite, that there was no possible way drugs had anything to do with her death.
I guess people do die of drug overdoses.
Sure.
It gets mixed with other drugs in your system, maybe. Maybe you have too much. You know, it's possible. It's possible. But, Robes, there's no evidence pointing to that. The evidence we have, or at least the facts we have, point to something else, Robes. And we don't have to speculate or come to our conclusions. When you all hear about the night and all the details, you will piece together the only thing that seems possible to piece together. Now, a reminder, Martha Nolan, she's not an American. This is an Irish-born young lady who came to the U.S. in 2015. She was an entrepreneur. She had her own resort wear. What do they call it? Resort lounge
resort wear, lounge wear. She had bikinis and resort wear, I think, is the best way to put it.
And so if you've ever been to a resort, there's always some little bikini shop or something down below. She had a pop-up at Gurney's, and that's the big deal in Montauk.
Gurney's in Montauk. There are some Gurney's. I know they're concentrated here in the Northeast, but they might be around the country as well. But it's a high-end luxury resort where you have folks with deep pockets. So yes, to get a pop-up resort wear store basically in Gurney's, that's huge. That's you're on your way. You have just now launched and scored something major, because now your brand is visible to the folks who can afford it.
In a very high traffic area where people are going to be visiting. So that's who she is. However, she's a small business owner.
Yep.
She's an entrepreneur, so it means you have to raise money. Now, this is where Durnan comes in. He, and I think we know this, he was an investor in her company. He is, at least at the time this incident happened, he was 60 years old. You can guess he's 61, 62, but in his early 60s now. So the way the evening goes, Robes, first of all, before we get into the stuff we found out after the incident, when it happened, we learned that a young woman had died on a yacht. The next day, witnesses had given their statements and whatnot to a lot of newspapers and reporters. So the story that came out immediately didn't sound right at all, which is that a 911 call came in at midnight, Robes, but not from the guy she was with.
Yes, this is one of the many bizarre parts to this story. So yes, folks who were sleeping or on their nearby boats or yachts were woken up, they claim, around midnight to having something being thrown at their boats. I believe it was sunscreen. In another case, I believe he took a metal rod from one of a nearby boat and started banging it, trying to get people's attention because he needed help. But here's the deal. He was naked. He was described as running up and down the dock naked, screaming for help, throwing things at boats, trying to wake folks up. until someone eventually called 911, and someone in the nearby boat actually said they came over to the boat and started giving Martha Nolan CPR, and they're the ones that called 911. Okay.
So that's the story. Now, that story is all we had for the most part in the day or two after. And again, we know this. We were in town. We were getting the local
Yes.
papers and local reports and local buzz on the street. Everything, Robes. And we were all, let's say we were terrified. We had kids with us. Now they're college kids and whatnot. But still, Robes, the town didn't know if there was a murder on the loose.
It was frightening because it was just there were so many holes as to how it happened and when it even happened, because the timeline is also mysterious.
So, but at the time, that's all we knew. And obviously, Robes, what's the key detail? Why is a naked dude running around hitting the... What was that about? Why is he naked? And why is he going that route? Why hasn't he called 911? Those are questions. Robes, that's legit.
Why didn't he call 911, and why was he naked? Those are the two glaring questions.
Okay, but that's what we got immediately after. We did hear a little time later more details, and we were getting them from Durnan and his attorneys. So Durnan then, Robes, has his version of events. And so now we're getting more detail. So let's go back. And this is what he claimed happened starting at around, what time did they meet? They met at 7:30 and they took off on his smaller boat first.
Right. He had a smaller boat called Hell in a Bucket. Crazy name. And they went around and apparently had their meeting, but they pulled back into the marina and switched boats. He had another boat dock there called the Ripple. And he said that he and Martha had a drink for about an hour or so, when around 10:30 or 11, and these are his words and his timeline, she just went limp. And he actually used the words through his attorney. He knew she was gone immediately.
His words. So he gave her CPR.
He claims he gave her CPR.
Trying to help her.
But, so if that happened between 10:30 and 11, why was the first 911 call not made until midnight? And that was around the time that the folks who were in the marina first described hearing him running up and down, naked, calling for help.
So ding, 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 ding. Robes, that's a common... You don't... Robes, that's just... What? That's the first question a police officer would ask, yes?
What was going on?
Why the delay? So you're telling us as early as 10:30 p.m., this woman had an episode in which she went limp and was dead. He said gone immediately, right? That happened as early as 10:30.
Say it even happened at 11.
Let's go.
The end of his timeline.
What do you want to go with? 11:15? Whatever. But going by his timeline, 11, Rose.
Fine. 11:01.
Why is there an hour? What happened for an hour? Did he really on his own try to revive her on his own
for an hour?
For an hour before going, well, I guess I need help. That's
unlikely.
It's tough. Rose, I try to leave space. He's freaking out. He's scared. He doesn't know what to do. He panics. People behave differently in emergencies. That is a tall order to ask us to understand.
It's illogical. I would be willing to say.
Drops dead in front of you. No, he said she goes limp. He doesn't know she's dead. Does he know what's wrong with her? Let me call, please, somebody. Help.
The first thing any ordinary person would do who had nothing to do with this person falling limp, the first thing, and truly the only thing you would do, is call 911. And then you would try to see if there's a pulse, and you would have the 911 operator walk you through CPR so that you know what you're doing while you're waiting for emergency personnel to get there.
He's 60 and he knows this.
You can't tell me that you own 2 yachts, you've been circling around, and you don't have a cell phone between you and Martha Nolan. And we know Martha Nolan had her cell phone because she was texting her friends and her boyfriend. She had actually just told her boyfriend she was ordering an Uber and would be home soon. So there were phones on the boat, and he, for whatever reason, did not use either one of them to call 911.
So let's go with his scenario for a second, Robes. Okay? He's on a boat. They've been drinking, they said, right?
Yep.
Hanging out. Fine. I won't even involve the drugs in it. Let's just say you've been drinking for an hour. Everybody's a little lightheaded. Fine. His story is that she goes limp. He tries to give her CPR. She vomits, right? She vomits all over him.
Even though he said she was gone immediately.
Gone immediately.
I don't know how those two things can both exist at the same time.
I could talk to a doctor about it.
Okay.
Is that possible that someone dies and still their body is getting rid of fluid? I don't know. But let's go with his story for a
Okay.
second. Let's just go with his story. Goes limp, giving her CPR, she vomits all over me. So then finally at midnight, vomit all over me. I decide I need to go get help. So before I go, I want to strip naked and run and get the help.
That makes no sense. First of all, if someone vomited on you, again, the last thing you're going to do before you go get help is decide to take all your clothes off so that you can get the smell of vomit off of you, or you're not thinking about that.
About vomit.
If someone who you were just with, who you cared about, had just fallen limp, say you did try to get the CPR, say they vomited on you, you're not going to give a rat's ass if you have vomit all over you. You're not going to take the time to even think about derobing. And why are you going to take your pants and your underwear off? Like, why are you going to completely get naked? That makes zero sense.
I'm trying to leave space for something. I'm trying to leave space for something happening in which this scenario can be explained. I'm trying to leave some space, Robes. But to strip naked before you go outside doesn't make sense. It just, okay, let him answer it.
Well, and Martha Nolan's family have said as they were preparing to file this lawsuit, that they heard from police that he had cleaned the boat up, that the boat was cleaned up. So, that's of note. And that is a real concern and could possibly explain the time period that's in question, that we don't quite understand what he was doing, why he wasn't calling 911, and why he wasn't getting help sooner.
Robes, if there was a 10-minute delay in calling 911, I would go, what the hell are you doing?
Exactly.
Robes, we talk about an hour and a half before you go get help. It just doesn't make sense. I don't want to anybody listening, you all can come up with your own scenario for what you think might have been going on. But Robes, it's almost insulting the way the case has been handled, given these details, and you're actually not going to answer. And I don't know how much they've told the family, but the family doesn't seem, at least the impression they're giving publicly is not that the police have been forthcoming.
No, and that they have had to literally take matters in their own hands, that they've had an independent investigation done. They've had an independent autopsy done. Look, this reminds me, I'm thinking of Nolan Wells. I'm thinking of Celeste Rivas Hernandez. I'm thinking of families who have had to or felt the need to take matters into their own hands because they're not getting the answers they need from police or from investigators, and they don't trust what little they have received. And that is an issue. And if it's your child, of course you're going to behave like this. Of course you're going to try to find answers. You're not going to rest until you feel as though you know what happened to your child.
Look, we have to give room, Rose said, that these are decent folks in the prosecutor's office and in the police department. These are decent folks who are doing the best they can. If this is the best they can, again, it's just difficult to try to criticize. We don't know what their evidence is, but they can tell us, Robes. Prosecutors do it all the time. I'm not bringing the case because I don't think I can get a conviction. We hear that regularly. Are they scared to come out and say that because they think they're going to unfairly call this guy a murderer? And well, we can't prove it, but are they worried about that? Should there be some protection? There's a victim here, though, right?
Yes.
Whose justice trumps anybody else's, I would assume. Of course, you don't want to wrongly accuse a guy, but at what point does this guy want his name cleared? What point does he not want his name attached to this? At what point does he think it's just going to fly away, or it'll float away and it'll never be found out? Robes, this is a bizarre story. We feel a connection to it because of where we were. We were there while that town was going through it. But Robes, this is an incredibly frustrating story.
Yes.
And I can't imagine how the family's feeling about it.
I can't either. And look, I applaud their decision to push this situation to push this investigation. And I'm curious if the police involved, if the prosecuting, if the district attorney, if they are going to feel the need to make any sort of comment, if they're going to follow up based on this lawsuit with where their investigation stands, or to ask the public to withhold judgment until they finish their investigation. Can they give us an idea of when their investigation might be finished? If it is active, if they have closed it, if they've made a determination. I do feel like at this point, yes, they owe the family this, but they do also owe the public this, because it's their job to protect the public. It's their job to seek justice when a wrong has been committed. And you have a family now filing this lawsuit saying a wrong has been committed and our child suffered. Our child was assaulted. Our child experienced pain. Our child's death was caused by a man who so far has not had any, as far as we know, any ramifications. We don't even know how long he's been questioned, how often he's been questioned, where police are in terms of have they cleared him. We've heard nothing. We've heard a little bit from his attorney, and that frankly made things even stranger.
Yeah, I don't know. This was the part, I guess, well, it certainly pissed you off initially, but there was reason to be upset about. He made a suggestion there was a romantic relationship between Durnan and Martha Nolan. And he did it bizarrely, and then the next day or something came back, and he didn't stand by what he initially said. And he said enough, Robes, to put a story out there to suggest this woman, Martha Nolan, was willing to do whatever she wanted or had to do to keep her business alive. Like she was willing to be romantic with an investor for the sake. They put a narrative out there, Robes, in a very, what's the best, in an irresponsible way.
That's a good way to put it, because it was just vague enough that you could draw your own conclusions, and you knew where they wanted you to be. They knew what they were insinuating without getting specific. But without a doubt, they acted as though there was a romantic, a sexual relationship, that he had been her main investor, that he had invested upwards of $200,000 into her company. This was a late night business meeting on a yacht, but she was in full contact with her friends and her boyfriend the entire time. And I think that's a really important part of this. And then when he had he had suggested that Durnan was so much in her life, or Durlan was so much in her life, that her family knew of him and her family had met him. And they immediately said, and her friends said, this is ridiculous. Her friends actually did speak out and say she was not in a relationship with this man. Absolutely not. Her boyfriend, who I believe had hoped to become her fiance soon, that at least is what he had said, all of them refuted these claims that there was some sort of other relationship other than a business one. And so, the attorney backed down the next day and said, well, just out of respect for Martha Nolan,
that made it
we won't
shittier.
say anything further.
That was crappier, babe. To say that. Like, I'm trying to protect the dead here. I'm trying to make sure I protect her reputation. You put it out there in the first place. Again, I want to give everybody credit for being decent folks, and missteps get made. This is the time, Robes, hopefully now. The family took this action. Is it going to prompt other people to come forward to speak? Is it going to prompt the prosecutor's office or the police department to now prioritize, to now get on top of things? We don't know. But it is possible this man could never face criminal charges, but still be held responsible for her death. And I think the easiest and the quickest, and people will be able to go, oh yeah, OJ. OJ was found not guilty in a criminal court. The standard is much lower in a civil court, Robes. Much.
He could absolutely be held criminally responsible for Martha Nolan's death, but not actually be charged criminally with her murder or with anything that led to her death. So,
and look, that's real. He is being accused by the family today, officially, in court, of being a murderer.
Correct.
Period.
And so we shall wait. Christopher Durnan is going to have to respond with his attorneys within the next few days. So this is going to be an interesting case indeed. And I'm just curious to see if this will prompt police, investigators, prosecutors to say something, anything, to get on the record, to make an official statement about what they believe happened to Martha Nolan?
Well, her family thinks they know. Now it's a matter of they can convince a court, a judge, and yes, jurors that they are right and how much they are willing to possibly receive financially. Obviously, it's not about the money. This is about just same thing with did Ron Goldman's family. They still ain't seen a dime, right?
I believe they did their best to make it
But-
difficult
yeah.
for O.J. Simpson to ever earn a living, but he found a way around it by getting kind of trade value. He never got cash. He found a way around it, and I don't think they ever got a dime.
But isn't that something still to this day that family can say that a court found him responsible for killing those two people?
Yes.
That I'm sure the family is going after that, Robes, and that's more important, obviously, than any dime they would get possibly from this guy. Need to say, again, he is an innocent man. Christopher Derlin is an innocent man. He has not been charged with anything. He has not been hauled into court for anything criminally at this point, Robes. So that needs to be said, and I guess a fair shake needs to be given. But Martha Nolan and her family deserve more than they're getting right now.
Yes, everyone, every family deserves some answers or at least some indication, I would say, at the very least, of where the investigation is, where it's headed. And I think we, the public, deserve it as well. For anyone who just believes in our judicial system knows that that is the basic level. We deserve at least to know where things stand a year after someone's death.
Well, we will know more soon because he has to respond to this. We are keeping a close eye, like we have been for the past year, on this story. And we'll keep you updated. Always appreciate you spending a little time with us. I'm TJ, that's Robes. We're out of network.